Hi, it's Dr. Scott Laborwit back again for another cataract pieces. This is a focus on how to get that first piece out of the bag called nuclear breakdown. And it's focusing on how to approach nuclear removal and utilize your phaco machine most efficient for this step. We'll start with a chalk talk because we often forget that this is really a huge ship in a bottle type problem. So the math doesn't even make sense. The lens is huge. So when you're operating, we tend to think in the 2D context. So you're just trying to pull a piece out. You're focused on where the tip of the phaco is pulling. But this red cartoon is really showing that the lens is huge. And it measures maybe 5.5 by 11. And it's deep too, 2.5 millimeters deep. But your opening is small. It's a 5 or 5.5 capsulotomy. So you're trying to get that huge red piece out of that small green opening. And so let's talk about ways we can approach that. This is a coronal view showing in red this sculpted area, but once you crack, the green area is representing the plate or the back of the lens. And as you're pulling pieces out of the bag, this becomes very relevant and will not allow the piece to be removed. When you crack the lens in half, you're watching your crack, but you really should be noticing the location of the crack and then looking at the edge of it to see how much plate or deep cataract is left behind. In this example, when this lens is cracked in half, the top half has less of the groove once it's cracked, and when I look at the depth, it's somewhat thin. So I'll choose the top half to remove since it's a smaller piece. It's tempting to want to go right in the middle of the lens and pull, but as we think of the cartoon earlier with the red and the green opening, it's just not enough room to easily get a moderately dense lens out. So I'll rotate, and the key is to get the tip occluded and build the vacuum and pull. But notice I'm not in the middle, I'm more on the edge. Once the tip is 100% occluded, I'm watching the vacuum, which is on the right side. You'll see it go above 500. I'm also, when I'm pulling and phacoing, I'm making sure that I'm not in an area that I can surge through the lens. Also notice the phaco tip really doesn't leave more than 2 millimeters from the central visual axis, so do not reach for pieces. So when engaging a piece, you'll see I rotate the lens, but I'm also going to rotate the bevel so it's flush with the edge. Here I'm inspecting the edge of the crack, and you can see well, and you should pause and learn that the crack's to the left of my groove. That's why I grab the other piece. And you can see the depth, so I can see how well I sculpted, and I'm looking at that because as I pull pieces, if it was very thick, it'd be very difficult to get the pieces because those plates would keep bumping into each other, not allowing the piece to leave. Some keys to getting the nucleus safely out of the bag. The tip should be 100% occluded with minimal phaco. And then once the tip's occluded, make sure you do not go into position 3 on the foot pedal, so there should be no further phaco or you'll lose the piece. Also, I'm not reaching beyond 2 millimeters. And once I hear the vacuum, I pull. This is a runway because I need to see that if I surge through the piece, that you can see I have plenty of room of lens to go through. So I'm phacoing slightly and just enough to get the tip occluded, and then I pull. This is showing that you really should be only working within 2 millimeters. So that full press was the whole pedal. But as I'm occluding the tip and building the vacuum, I'm only in 2 millimeters of the whole pedal. So again, I turn my bevel so it's flush. I'm not exactly in the middle because I got to get the head of that piece out through the opening. So once I'm against it, I phaco slightly into it, occlude it. If you look on the right, the vacuum's at 517, and then I pull slowly to get the piece out of the bag. So the phaco tip's never unsafe. There was plenty of runway in case it surged through, and the tip of the phaco instrument never reached for any pieces as well. Another example, and I'm constantly asking myself, once I crack, given the information I see during the crack, which side will I grab first? So here the top half seems to be a smaller piece, but I'm noticing also that in the center there's an extension with this crack of a piece sticking out. And if I pulled the bottom half, that piece would block the other piece from coming. So here I magnify in, and right under my phaco tip is this extension, almost like a floor called tongue and groove. So I definitely am going to take the top half. I did notice the depth of my crack to see how much plate was left. So I'm turning my bevel, not reaching too far. I inspect the runway. I phaco just enough to occlude the tip, and I look to the right, and my vacuum's starting to build. I still can't get the piece out. So I saw that I don't have a safe runway. I don't want to keep phacoing without enough lens behind it. So I rotate it, and I'm trying again here. And still, even with occlusion, it broke. So I went to the spot next to it. I have a good runway, and I'm pushing with my other instrument. That's key to separate those plates, and it allowed that piece to come forward. So if you're just looking at the phaco tip, you'd miss it. But the second instrument can really help unlock those plates to free the piece to come up. So I push down and away on the piece I wasn't trying to phaco to allow it to come forward. Again, another opportunity, once the piece is out, I grade my sculpt and see if I could have gone deeper or if I went deep enough. I'm looking at the edge of my crack for this information. I also know I chose the right piece because I can still see my groove. So this is clearly the larger piece of the two. Again, I have a good runway, 100% occlusion. I don't pull until the vacuum's above 500, and I'm usually listening for that as I phaco. I'm also not grabbing it in the middle of the lens. I'm grabbing more of an edge. So just to summarize, as you're cracking, pay attention to what side is smaller. Look at the depth of your plate so you know how easily the piece will come out. Keep in mind that it's a 3D piece you're removing. Engage that tip with 100% with minimal phaco. Make sure you have a good runway so it's safe. And then once the vacuum's above 500, slowly pull. Use your second instrument to push the other piece down and away. Notice the phaco tip doesn't move more than 2 millimeters from the visual axis, and my foot pedal's within a 2 millimeter zone the entire time. Again, engage that tip, vacuum high, and pull. That's all for today. Look forward to seeing you in the next segment of cataract pieces. Thank you.